You are not going to want to miss this episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast, because what I have learned from our guest today has already helped me find a quick and easy way to save $249,635 to be exact. And the best part is I didn't have to give up anything at all. Really, my mind was blown. Now, I want you to imagine, what if you could do the same for your financial brand's account holders, for your bank and credit union account holders? What would life look like for them? What would life look like if you could do this for yourself? Just think how you would feel that if by the end of today's episode, you were also able to find an extra $250,000 just lying around without having to give up anything at all.
You're listening to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.
Welcome back to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. I'm James Robert Lay, founder and CEO of the Digital Growth Institute, where we help financial brands uncover their biggest marketing and sales blind spots so that they can quickly stop losing loans and deposits. Are you curious? Are you curious to learn where your financial brand's marketing and sales blind spots are, the ones that you don't see, the one that you're not aware about? Well, if you are, visit www.digitalgrowth.com/benchmarks. And you can see how your performance compares to other financial brands. You see, once you schedule your 30-minute blind spot benchmark call, we're going to walk you through the different benchmark findings so that you know exactly where you have blind spots that are costing you millions in loans and deposits. And that's because those blind spots are often a result of unseen marketing and sales gaps within your digital buying journeys. Joining me for today's conversation, which is part of the Exponential Insights series, is Gordon Stein. Gordon is the author of the book Cashflow Cookbook, which includes $2 million worth of financial freedom ideas with 60 easy recipes that you can apply yourself. Welcome to the show, Gordon. It is so good to share time with you today, buddy.
Yeah, listen, great to be here and good to see you again, James.
Good to see you. You and I connected in Nashville. We were both speaking at an event together, and I really appreciate the work that you are doing. I appreciate your thinking and perspective. And before we get into talking about some of that, you wrote a book, the Cashflow Cookbook. What is good in your world right now, personally or professionally? It's your pick to get started on a positive note.
Well, working on some new songs on the guitar, which is always fun. I like to keep a balance of some fun physical things, some kayaking, some biking, some things happening on the guitar, and helping people with their financial wellness. So if I got all those three going, then I'm feeling great.
Life is good for you when you have that balance. And you talk about the physical well-being, the mental well-being, i.e. the guitar, because music is good for the soul. Music is good for the mind. And then you're also talking about the financial well-being. Why did you write the Cashflow Cookbook? What was the problem that you were trying to solve with your thinking here?
Well, it's two things. I've always been interested in personal finance, and I've always had, in the high tech world where I worked for 35 years, I've always had large teams of younger people, and they always want to talk about money. How do you get ahead? How'd you save money? How'd you afford this big sailboat? And so it's always out there. And that combined where I stumbled into a way of getting car washes for free. That's all this crazy journey began. And it was a way of getting car washes through a loyalty program and not having to pay for them, save $25 a month. Not a big deal, but I was intrigued because it was no more difficult than what I was doing before. And so I started gathering these ideas of how do you free up cash flow without giving anything up. And that's how it all got started.
It's interesting you talk about you're coming from the high-tech world. You're working with teams. They want to talk about money. I think about what's going on in financial services right now. And if we look at the larger macro level, 85% of people in the U.S., 70 to 85% of the U.S. are struggling with financial stress. They're struggling with financial anxiety. But I also think about those that work within a financial services organization, a bank, a credit union. And I don't think people are immune to that financial stress. I don't think people are immune to that financial anxiety. And one of the things that I know you put in the book was more than 70% report carrying financial stress into the workplace. So it's interesting that that you even wrote the book thinking about your own personal experience as a leader. Where is there an opportunity to help internal teams, employees, peers, colleagues increase their financial confidence, because we do work within financial services, so that they can go to increase the financial confidence of their members, of their account holders?
Well, it's interesting. I always do a pre-survey before I do one of my talks. And when I pre-survey people in the financial services business, I ask, how do they feel about their own finances? How confident are they in their future? And then I ask, what do they think about their clients? Or in the case of credit unions, what do they think about their members? And it's interesting because very often they're as concerned about their own finances as they are about their clients or their members. So there's
Mhm.
a huge opportunity to make that change. But I think they're held back because a lot of the traditional personal finance thinking is based around giving up things you love, trying to save 10% of what you earn and doing detailed financial budgeting. And I got to tell you, nobody likes any one of those three things. So there has to be a better way.
Right.
And that's where I really spent my time with Cashflow Cookbook.
Well, talk to me about what's in the cookbook. You have 60 recipes
Yeah.
that can provide help, they can provide hope. What are one or two of your favorite recipes that would create value for those who are watching or listening, because they do work within financial services and they do have those same questions, they do have those same concerns as those that they are helping themselves?
Yep. Well, I'm on the eighth printing of the book. So, what I changed most recently is I added a story to the start of the book, and we look over the shoulders of this couple, Eric and Keisha, and they make a number of financial discoveries, ways of freeing up cash on their everyday recurring bills. And so, in the book, as we follow on this process, they free up $1,800 a month. But what's really incredible is they give up absolutely nothing. And so that's kind of the hook of the book. And it gets people thinking. They work with their wealth advisor and they add another 1.5 million to their wealth at retirement. So you'd asked about a couple of examples. I just recently did a talk here in Ohio for a wealth advisor, and she kicked off the talk. She'd read my book and she said, I changed my cell phone provider for her family cell phone business, freed up $300 a month. So if you stretch that out over 30 years, that's $308,000. A lot of people say, I don't want to call my cell phone provider. I'm going to have to be on hold for an hour. They've got bad hold music. And I say to those people, if you make more than $308,000 an hour in your job, then don't bother making the call. But for those of us making less than $308,000 an hour, yeah, you make the call. So there's opportunities on every one of these recurring bills. As example, here in Ohio, I took $100 a month out of my electric bill, slashed my consumption in half, handful of simple changes around the house. What did I give up? Nothing. My life is exactly the same. So every category of monthly spending, home insurance, car insurance, cell phone bills, gas bill, electric bill, water bill, sewer bill, house taxes, every single one of these things can be lowered. And typically it's really easy. It can be as short as an hour, might take a handful of hours. Once you're done, you reap those savings and you want to take those savings, put them to work for you, paying down debt or increasing investment.
That's a really great practical example. And I think right now, specifically in the subscription economy, and
Mhm.
how I'm having second thoughts. I remember back, let's just say 2008, 9, 10, we start seeing the subscription models pop up. You saw it with music. Pandora was one of the early leaders, and then Spotify. You
Mhm.
see Prime. You see Netflix. There's a plethora of them now, and some of them are $10, $15 a year. Others are $15 a month. But what I'm noticing is what we could cut the cable back in the day. It was a cost savings, but now it appears to be, as the trend is going, that wow, the cost is creeping up month over month or year over year. And so what
Mhm.
you're advocating for is to just simply pause, reflect, and make a phone call or two, and then you could have a huge exponential return over an extended period of time. Like, back to the point, I think you said it was like $100 over the course of 30 years. It was like a $300,000 when you add an investment. What holds people back though from creating that space to do the review, to do that reflection, and they just kind of keep doing the same thing over and over again?
That's the $1,000,000 question. I think you nailed it. I think it's inertia.
Mm,
People don't want to set a course of action. They go to their jobs, they come home, they turn on the TV, they watch Netflix, they have a snack, they're feeling tired, they go to bed, and they do the same thing the next day. So they need a little bit of a personal intervention. And that's why when I modified the book, I added the story because my test readers, they all said, but that was so easy. And I say, yes, that's the point. And they say, but they added 1.5 million to their retirement. I say, yes. And they say, they didn't give anything up. And I say, exactly. So let's go take the time. Let's look at it this way. The average American watches 20 hours of television a week. Now, in 1 week, giving up television for 1 week, you could read Cashflow Cookbook cover to cover. You could implement 5 or 6 recipes. You could add $1 million to your wealth at retirement, giving up 1 week of television.
yeah,
We all have the time.
and that right there is something that I've been thinking about since writing Banking on Change and working with financial brand
Mhm.
leaders. Is I'm asking them the question. We did a workshop yesterday. It was a 90-day Banking on Change workshop, and one of the questions that I was asking is, who is on your team? And team is an acronym for time, energy, attention, and money. And there are 4 questions that we need to ask.
Mm,
First is, how are you investing your time? Because time is an investment. I think a lot of us have been taught over the years, we're asked and we think, how are you spending, or how am I spending my time? Well, no, how are you investing your time? Because in this particular example that you're sharing, that time becomes a multiplier over time. The second is, how are you then spending your energy? Because energy is finite. When energy depletes, you're going to have to rest and recharge. The third is, what are you paying attention to? And to your point, if the average American is watching 20 hours a week of television, well, we're paying with our time. And then finally, the fourth is the M, which is all how you answer the first 3 will really determine your relationship with money. So what's your relationship with money? And then going up, the ladder and asking, well, how are you investing your time? How are you spending your energy? What are you really paying attention to? And
mhm.
so when you think about the opportunities here and the simplicity of it all, it's a mental reframe that is simple, it's easy to understand. But when you look out at the macro level, and you do a lot of work with credit unions and leagues and associations and wealth managers, what's the biggest financial challenge that is people are confronted with when it comes to their relationship with money right now?
I think it's a couple things. It's inertia, and I love your team notion. So, people really struggle making the tiniest of change. If we all got up a half an hour earlier, if we all got in an extra half an hour of exercise, if we examined our monthly bills and made a handful of changes. So, I think that's really the biggest issue is, you know, their challenge is putting in the team, the time, the effort, et cetera, to go and make those
Mm,
changes. And how does it manifest itself? I think it always comes down to cash flow. So people get, where are we really in trouble? People feel they don't have the cash flow, and that leads to stress. And as I talked about in Cashflow Cookbook, you know, in 41% of divorces, money was a major cause.
yeah.
So you see it right across our lifestyle. And 65% of Americans are going to retire with less than $10,000. That's unbelievable in one of the richest countries in the world. Well, why? I think it's this inertia, and I think it's exactly what you're talking about. They're not educating themselves. They're not prepared to make a handful of simple changes.
Well, change is hard, change is confusing, change is painful, that I wrote about in Banking on Change. And coming back to your point of
Mhm.
stress, one of the things that you mentioned in the book is money is the top stressor for Americans. In fact, 77% of Americans are anxious about their finances. And then you go to the household, nearly 2/3 or 64% of Americans with children are living paycheck to paycheck. Where's the opportunity here for financial brands, credit unions, banks wealth managers, to help to start people to transform their beliefs about money so that they can transform their behavior around money, because belief is so powerful. The beliefs that we have around money. And if we think about what influences behavior, 95% of our actions run at a subconscious level that we're not even aware of. So our relationship with money is formed from early childhood, environment, etc. Where is there an opportunity for financial brands to truly help people transform beliefs so that they can transform behavior?
I would say it's even simpler than that. I think most books and most concepts and most speakers are trying to change that behavior. And changing behavior is really hard. If someone's going to stop and get their $6 latte and a $3 muffin on the way to work and another snack and a drink on the way home, to go and change that, it's really obvious. You're wasting a whole pile of money.
Yeah.
Not unusual. People waste $200-300 a month on snacks. That much cheaper ways of doing it. But to go and change that behavior is really hard. They want their latte and they're a Starbucks fan and all this stuff. But most books start there, which I think is the tough thing. Why do you want to change people's behaviors? It's way too hard. People don't want to change their behaviors. But if we can get them to free up $100 a month on their gas bill, or make a change to their cost of their cell phones, or a slicker way of getting their TV entertainment that doesn't involve changing any behaviors, doesn't involve giving anything up. Well, that's the easy way. So if you think of it in terms of a wealth advisor, if you're a wealth advisor, how do you differentiate yourself? You have a well-crafted portfolio, you manage the client's risk. Isn't that what everybody does? You give them a portfolio with gray-haired people on a sailboat, and a bunch of papers inside that they'll never read. They all do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you actually wanted to make a difference, there is no bigger difference you can make for wealth clients if you're a wealth advisor than helping people to free up more cash flow for investment, but doing it with minimal effort. So how else would a wealth advisor add $1 million or $2 million to their client's wealth? Put them in more risky assets? Probably don't want to do that. What other vehicles do you have? Be a better stock picker? Very hard to beat the market. So the answer for how they can make a difference is help them with their financial wellness and do it the easy way by helping them free up more cash flow to invest or to pay down their debt.
That right there is a great reframe in my own perspective, because it's not changing behavior, it's simply asking the questions. And so I think as I create through just thought and ideas on this podcast, an opportunity for those watching or listening, take mobile banking, for example. Send out an email, run some type of content through mobile banking. When was the last time that you checked how much you could lower your gas bill? I will even tell you even a more practical example of that. Rocket Money is
Mhm.
now actively doing that. As I'm a Rocket Money subscriber, they're looking and analyzing my particularly reoccurring spend, and then they're notifying me and asking me those questions that I might not be thinking about, that I might not be having perspective on. So it's not changing my behavior, it's just simply asking the questions, and then it's that phone call of having to make hey, what can we do to auto insurance? I'm working on that right now, because that thing
Yeah.
seems to creep up every couple of years, and I'm like, got to switch the company again,
Yep. Yep.
to reduce the rate. In some cases, it's 50%. I've been able to drop that rate down, but just taking a couple hours, making a phone call, and life is good. When you look out at the future of financial services, what are you most hopeful? What are you most excited about? And the reason I'm asking that is there's been so much emphasis on financial literacy, on financial education. But as we look at the numbers in your book and we look at some of the other research here as well, have things changed? Have things gotten any better? Stayed the same? Maybe they've gotten worse. What are you hopeful about looking ahead towards the future through your lens and the work that you're doing?
I think there's a lot that financial services can do, and I think the technology and AI, some of those things are going to be really exciting opportunities. Chances to get much, much better customer service. I mean, waiting on hold and even the current chat kinds of protocols are not great. I think we're going to get to a whole new world powered by things like AI and natural language that'll make a huge difference for people. But I still think to actually change a person's outcome, I think we have to help them with their cash flow. And I think, we were chatting before the show, you know, the power of marketers. I mean, they're running functional MRIs. Which jingles are going to appeal to us the most to make us buy? You look at the Jardiance commercial on TV, everybody can hum that tune. I don't even have type 2 diabetes, but I'm in there snapping my fingers along with it, right? So this power of persuasion is incredible. And we're still there with our little reptilian brains from, tens of millions of years ago, trying to combat this input. So I think financial services has a huge opportunity to actually help people with their finances. And I don't mean, you know, a cheesy course that they can go online and do it with, spouting the same stuff over and over again. Let's actually change. Let's help them push back and free up that cash flow in an easy way. And then let's get them to deploy that cash through incremental investment. Get people tracking their net worth instead of tracking a monthly budget. Is another great example. All of this traditional financial thinking needs to get turned on its head. You see these people, they're so dialed into this notion of a budget, and in their budget, they've got their cell phone bill and their car insurance bill. Why are you looking at that every month? It's not changing. Let's take all of those recurring things and do some real surgery on them, and then take the rest of and make sure you're saving 10 or 15%. That's where it can come from, and then go have fun with your money. It doesn't need to have any stress at all.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing we need to help people with.
You bring up a very interesting point about AI and thinking about the work that you've done over the years and the changes
hmm
that you have seen around just people's relationship with money.
hmm
Where does the human factor, or where might the human factor play going forward into the future, whether you're talking about a credit union or a wealth manager, financial advisor? What role will they play in helping the people that they're helping free up cash flow? Because I have a sneaking suspicion that as we move further into the age of AI, we might see the pendulum swing from team tech back towards team humanity. Not that the technology is going to go away, but it's just there's a very human factor here when it comes to relationship that we have with money, but also the relationship that we have with other people. What's your take on that?
There's a massive opportunity if you think about what you could do using an AI tool. If the AI tool, knows where I live, knows my age, knows, let's use cell phones, knows how many cell phones I have in the family, they know my data consumption. If you had all the data, I mean, how hard is it to say, okay, here's what you need to do. You need to switch from vendor A to vendor B, and you need to get into this plan. And because I'm over 55, your best deal is right here with T-Mobile, whoever it may be.
Right.
Well, this is like falling off a log, given the power of what AI can do. And to look at all of these kinds of things, there is a whole bunch of hope there, um, to go and pick off these examples and make a real difference for clients and members.
Yeah. As we start to wrap up here, what is one thing that someone who is watching or listening can do today, either for themselves or for the account holders, the members that they are helping through the work that they're doing, so that they can feel like they're making progress? What would be the one thing, one recipe that they could play, or that they can cook with right now?
I'll give you, just a silly one. I did an experiment driving back and forth from Cleveland to Toronto, and I set my cruise control at 65, 70, and 75 miles an hour. And, even on a long drive like that, a 5-hour drive, what's going to make a difference of 20 minutes or something from slowest speed to the fastest? The gas difference was 42%.
Wow.
And the car's quieter. I can hear the podcast I'm listening to better. It's relaxed. We have this thing where we have to go faster, have to go. Why? So now I drive, I'll drive at 70 instead of driving at 80, or I'll drive at 65 instead of 75, depending on the conditions, because that 10-mile-an-hour difference translates to something like 40% different gas mileage. And then you see these sites saying, Gas Buddy, here's where you go to save 2 cents a gallon. Why do I want to save 2 cents a gallon? Why don't I save 40%? So that's just one example. Simple changes. You lift up a little bit with your foot and have a nice quiet ride.
That right there, I'm taking that one to the bank, because I am the one who's driving 80, 85 miles an hour here in Texas, but
Yeah.
I've never considered the fuel consumption piece of this, and particularly we're going out to Big Bend National Park later this year in the fall when it starts cooling down, and that's a 10-hour drive. So, I'm one who's, let's get there as fast as possible. But back to your point, it's like, how much of a time difference? It's nominal, but when you're talking about, and that's the thing, how are you investing your time? Well, this is a much bigger return on the savings by just slowing down, just ever so slightly. Gordon, this has been such a great conversation. For someone who is watching or listening, they want to continue the discussion that we've started and pick up a copy of your book. Where can they go to do that?
Well, you can get Cashflow Cookbook. It's available on Amazon. There's a U.S. edition and a Canadian edition in case we have any Canadian listeners. And, we want to talk about a great investment. Here's your ticket to free up hundreds or probably even thousands of dollars a month. Get that money working for you, change your finances, don't give up anything at all.
That's exactly right. And I will tell you, I believe 7% of those that watch and listen to this podcast are our friends up in Canada. So they are definitely listening for sure. Grab a copy of the book, connect with Gordon, learn with Gordon. Gordon, thanks for joining for another episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. This has been a lot of fun today.
Real pleasure. Thank you so much. Great to see you again, James.
Absolutely. As always, and until next time, be well, do good, and be the light.